What if we told you that the Russia-Ukraine conflict isn't a 2-year war, but a decade-long struggle? That's the perspective many Ukrainians hold on to, viewing the conflict not as a short-term altercation, but as a 10-year standoff. Let's go back a decade ago. The seeds of the conflict were sown with an unacknowledged military intervention by Russia. It was a covert operation, a silent intrusion, a veiled act of aggression that many failed to fully comprehend at the time. Fast forward 8 years and the situation escalated into a full-scale assault. It wasn't a sudden eruption, but the culmination of years of tension and clandestine activities. Now let's rewind to the year 2014. The Maidan Uprising, a series of violent clashes between protesters and riot police in Kiev, marked a turning point. Triggered by the then-President Yanukovych's decision to align Ukraine with Moscow, the uprising was a bold stand against external influence. And the casualties from this event? They are remembered as the first soldiers, the initial martyrs in this decade-long war. The Maidan Uprising in 2014 was the spark that ignited this ongoing conflict, and the casualties from this event are remembered as the first soldiers in this decade-long war. To understand the full scope of this conflict, we must examine the key events that have shaped it. The saga begins a decade ago with Russia's unacknowledged military intervention in Ukraine. The flame of conflict was sparked further with the Maidan Uprising in 2014, where protesters clashed with riot police in Kyiv. This uprising was triggered by President Yanukovych's decision to align Ukraine with Moscow, a move that caused deep divisions within the country. These brave protesters are honored as the first soldiers in this ongoing war with Russia. Fast forward today, 708 of the Russia-Ukraine war, a day marked by key developments. Ukrainian President Zelensky considered firing top army commander Valery Zaluzhny over a failed counteroffensive against Russian troops. On the same day, the International Court of Justice rejected most of Ukraine's terrorism case against Russia, which accused Moscow of supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine. In the midst of these political happenings, social reactions played a significant role. A Russian rock band, By2, critical of the Ukraine war, faced deportation from Thailand for performing without permits and criticizing Russia's invasion and President Putin. In a surprising twist, the Siberian Battalion, a new Russian unit, chose to fight for Ukraine, risking backlash from Russia for joining the enemy. As we move forward, we continue to see a conflict that is far from black and white, with complexities and contradictions at every turn. It's a conflict that has seen civilian deaths rise consistently from 2014 to 2024, a tragic testament to the human cost of this war. These events mark the milestones in a conflict that has affected millions and changed the geopolitical landscape. Behind the politics and power struggles, there are real people paying the price. This line bears a weight that goes beyond mere words, as it encapsulates the tragic reality of the Russia-Ukraine conflict from 2014 to 2024. The war, as any other, has brought about a profound human cost that is often overlooked amidst the diplomatic exchanges and strategic maneuvers on the global stage. Let's take a moment to delve into the depths of this human cost. The toll on civilian lives has been substantial, with Statista providing data that paints a grim picture of the casualties of this decade-long conflict. These are not just numbers, but lives lost, families torn apart, futures abruptly and unjustly cut short. Each figure represents a person who had the same hopes, dreams, and desires as any of us. But the human cost of war extends beyond the immediate loss of life. The conflict has led to massive displacement of people, forcing them from their homes and into an uncertain and often harsh existence. Imagine waking up one day to find your home, your neighborhood, and all that is familiar to you, transformed into a battlefield. Your life would be irrevocably changed in an instant, with the comfort of normalcy replaced by the chaos of war. Moreover, the effects of the war have permeated every aspect of daily life. The sound of gunfire and explosions have become a dreadful soundtrack to the lives of those living in the war-torn regions. Schools, hospitals, and other vital institutions have been compromised, making routine activities a challenge. The psychological impact, especially on children who have grown up amidst this violence, is devastating and will likely echo through generations. The numbers tell a harrowing story of loss and displacement, a testament to the harsh realities of war. These numbers remind us of the human faces behind the headlines, the individuals who have been caught in the crossfire of a conflict they didn't choose. As we explore the progression of this war, let's not forget the profound human cost that lies at its heart. In any conflict, there are key players whose decisions and actions shape the course of events. We cannot overlook the significant roles of political and military figures on both sides of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Let's delve into who these key players are and how their decisions and actions have influenced the course of this war. Firstly, the Russian side. The most prominent figure is President Vladimir Putin. His decision to align Russia against Ukraine has been the driving force of this conflict. His unwavering stance has been met with both criticism and support, shaping Russia's international relations and domestic politics. In the military arena, there have been several key figures. Among them, the Siberian Battalion stands out. This new Russian unit has chosen to fight for Ukraine, a decision that has not only risked backlash from Russia, but also added a complex layer to the conflict. Turning our attention to Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has been at the helm of the nation's response to the conflict. His consideration to dismiss top army commander Valery Zaluzhny over a failed counteroffensive against Russian troops underscores the high stakes of military decisions in this war. On the battlefield, the Ukrainian army and various volunteer battalions have played a pivotal role. Their resilience and determination in the face of adversity have been instrumental in Ukraine's defense against Russian aggression. Lastly, we must mention the protesters of the Maidan Uprising in 2014. While not traditional political or military figures, their stand against President Yanukovych's decision to align Ukraine with Moscow sparked the beginning of this conflict. In many ways, they are honored as the first soldiers in this war. The actions of these key players have, for better or worse, steered the course of this decade-long conflict. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has not occurred in a vacuum. It has drawn international attention and response. The global community has been actively engaged in this conflict, expressing their stance through diplomatic, economic, and military actions. Governments and international organizations have engaged in a delicate balancing act, seeking to prevent escalation while expressing their support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. One of the most significant responses has been economic sanctions. Numerous countries, led by the United States and European Union, have imposed sanctions on Russia, targeting key sectors of its economy, including energy, finance, and defense. These measures have put pressure on Russia's economy, but they have also had ripple effects on global markets affecting energy prices and international trade. On the diplomatic front, the United Nations, NATO, and other international bodies have been vocal in their condemnation of Russia's actions. There have been countless resolutions, statements, and debates all aimed at finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. However, the effectiveness of these diplomatic efforts has been questioned, as the war has continued unabated. In terms of military response, several countries have provided non-lethal military aid to Ukraine, including body armor, medical supplies, and surveillance equipment. Some nations have even provided training to Ukrainian forces. Yet, the decision to provide lethal aid, such as weapons, has been controversial and fraught with risk, as it could potentially escalate the conflict. It's important to note that the conflict has also had unintended consequences. For instance, it has driven a wedge between Russia and the West, pushing Russia closer to other geopolitical players like China. It has also fueled nationalist sentiments in both Russia and Ukraine, influencing domestic politics in these countries. Moreover, the war has had a profound impact on global security. It has undermined the post-Cold War security order, raising questions about the effectiveness of international law and the ability of the international community to prevent aggression. It has also sparked fears of a new Cold War, as tensions between Russia and the West reach levels not seen since the end of the 20th century. The war has had far-reaching effects, reverberating across borders and influencing international relations. As we look back on a decade of conflict, we must also look forward to what the future may hold. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has been a complex tapestry of political maneuvering, territorial disputes, and human tragedy. And while we can't predict the future with certainty, we can analyze current trends and expert predictions to sketch potential scenarios. Some analysts suggest that the conflict may continue in its current state, oscillating between periods of relative calm and intense fighting. Others foresee a possibility for diplomatic resolution, while a less optimistic outlook anticipates an escalation of hostilities. The role of international diplomacy and pressure is also crucial. The world watches as nations navigate the delicate balance between condemning aggression and avoiding direct military involvement. Economic sanctions, diplomatic negotiations, and humanitarian aid all play pivotal roles in the unfolding narrative. The trajectory of this conflict is also heavily influenced by the internal dynamics of Russia and Ukraine. Political shifts, public sentiment, and economic factors within these nations will undoubtedly shape the course of the conflict. The future of this conflict is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the decisions we make today will shape the world of tomorrow.